Well, hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for my 100th podcast episode. What a journey it has been, and thank you guys for joining me on it. Thank you to everyone who has listened to all of the episodes before this one. Thank you to everyone who has joined in along the way, and thank you to everyone who has been patient, as it has been a very long time since I have recorded an episode. It took me a while to think about how I wanted to reformat this podcast and what to do next as I move forward. There's some big things ahead that I will get into as I talk about it in this episode. But I just want to say thank you so much for being here and sticking with me. There has been a lot that has happened since my last episode, which was May 2024. And as I mentioned, I've taken some time to rethink about what I want to do with the format and what direction I want to take this podcast in the future. But I'll get there in a minute. First, I want to share an update on my own IBD journey. So, how am I? The last big update I shared was that I went back on medications in April of 2024. I had some intestinal bleeding for a few months, and my doctor did a calprotectin test at that time, and he immediately recommended that I go back on Humira. So I took his advice, and I did that. So I finally went back on medication, and I didn't get Humira this time, but my pharmacy prescribed me the biosimilar. So I am using Hadalima now, which I really like. It's got the auto-injector, like most of the pens, but it also kind of auto-ejects too, kind of pops off when it's done. So back on Humira, Hadalima, and I've been using it every 2 weeks since then. I've had no issues and I am feeling great. So I'm really happy to be back on it. Sometimes I still get run down easily. I still have to kind of find that balance, walk that fine line between, especially with fitness, between overdoing it and getting enough rest and still being able to work out and get some really good fitness in. So that's been a bit tricky, but overall, I've been feeling great. I have pretty well-sustained energy levels. I mean, I'm not going to go run a marathon, but I never would have before. So anyways, I'm feeling good. I'm doing good. And I have my 10th colonoscopy scheduled for the end of this month. So I'll give you guys an update on what happens when I get the colonoscopy report back and how it looks. Many of you know that I also have IgA nephropathy. And I think, so my nephrologist truly believes that this is secondary IgA nephropathy, that I only have this because it's an extraintestinal manifestation of Crohn's disease. So he's very adamant that if I control the Crohn's disease, then the IgA nephropathy will be controlled as well. So there were periods that my lab numbers a few years back, that my lab numbers for my kidneys were not looking good. That's what prompted the kidney biopsy and the diagnosis of IgA nephropathy. But I will say, I just went in a week or two ago to get my lab work done for my primary care provider, and the eGFR score that's always in the regular lab work was normal for the first time in years. And I know they say, the internet, whatever I've read or heard, that kidney function is not supposed to come back, but my kidney function appears to be completely normal. Creatinine was in the normal range, so everything was looking really good for my kidneys. So that is very great news. So I'll just continue to do what I'm doing, which is I try not to eat junk food too much or too often, and I try to do a little bit of fitness every few days, other day. So it's not anything extreme. I'm just trying to, be cognizant about what I eat and make sure that I move my body. So aside from Crohn's and IgA nephropathy, I now have a new issue that isn't really affecting me, but it is something that I now have to watch and keep an eye out for. And this was something very new, something I have never heard before. And it is called alpha-1. So it's actually, it's a deficiency. So it's actually an alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. And that was confirmed through blood work, but it's not something that they typically check for. This is a genetic condition, and I had had so much fatigue, and I'd had a cough that went on for a couple of years, and my primary care provider, I love her. She was phenomenal. She is phenomenal. And she was trying to run every lab test she could think of and do everything she possibly could to help me solve this cough that I had had for 2 years. It was so bad that when I was in the booth recording an audiobook, I would read a sentence and then cough, and then another sentence and cough. So that's part of the reason why I didn't do podcasts for so long, is because I could barely get a couple of sentences out without having to just go into this coughing fit, which is not really conducive for a conversation with somebody else. So eventually, she finally did this alpha-1 test, and I don't know what made her think of it or why, but I'm so grateful that she did, because it showed that I am deficient in the alpha-1 protein. It's a protein, alpha-1 antitrypsin. And I'm still new to learning about this. My pulmonologist described it as, told me to think of it like a molecule that helps to fix things in the body. So don't do anything that is going to make it harder for your body to recover. Primarily, the alpha-1 deficiency affects the liver and the lungs. It can end up resulting in emphysema, even without smoking, and cirrhosis, even without drinking. So in order to help not exacerbate those things, I just need to make sure that I'm not drinking crazily and not smoke, which I don't, so that's easy. But if I'm remembering everything correctly from what I've been told and what I've been learning, it's a protein that the liver makes, and the low levels of the alpha-1 antitrypsin protein leads to the lung and liver damage. It does so by misfolding and then getting trapped in the liver, which causes the damage that way. And then if there's not enough of it, that's what causes the lung damage. So like I said, I'm still new to figuring out all of this stuff, but alpha1.org has been the place that I've been going to get more information. Once the doctor ran it was more of a general kind of test to determine that I was low in the alpha-1 protein. And then I found out that, and then I Googled a whole bunch, and then I came across the alpha1.org website, and they had a test that you could order for a free test to get this checked. And so I did that. But then after that, in between all of the appointments between my primary care doctor, and she had referred me to the pulmonologist for this cough that just wouldn't go away forever. And then he saw those results, and so he also double-checked it and ran new blood work just recently that was more in-depth and confirmed everything that the University of Florida is who the program for the free alpha-1 test was through that I got from the alpha1.org website. So, long story short, now that's just something we just have to keep an eye on my liver, make sure it stays healthy through the years, so probably a liver ultrasound every year or other year, and then lung function test and probably a chest CT just to make sure every year or other year, just to make sure that my lungs are staying in good shape. So that is another fun condition to watch. And one other note with that is my pulmonologist, when he was going through all of this information with me, he told me that while I don't have to stop drinking completely, he said to keep in mind that for every one drink that I physically have to my liver, that's the equivalent of 5 to 10 drinks. So you can see how it would just compile and exacerbate things so much more over time if I didn't watch it. So I'll still have a glass of wine every once in a while, and maybe a margarita when it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but for the most part, I won't drink a whole lot, which I don't anyways, so I just will keep that to a minimum, and I won't start smoking. So, what else? I've got Crohn's disease, the IgA nephropathy, the alpha-1 genetic condition, if you will, and then I mentioned the cough that I had had for a couple of years. So we finally figured it out. I had gone to an ENT, the pulmonologist, my primary care doctor. Basically, it boils down to silent reflux. What is silent reflux? Well, it's acid reflux, except you don't get that heartburn sensation. It's just quiet, so you don't even realize it's heartburn. But it just takes that tiniest amount of acid to come up into your throat, your vocal cords, and then it just creates this sensation in your throat, this globulous kind of sensation, and it just forces you to constantly clear your throat and cough. So I now have a proton pump inhibitor that I take every day, and good old-fashioned Tums really helps. I take that with usually 1 or 2 with every meal. I still fast through the morning, and then I'll have my first meal around 2 in the afternoon. I might take 1 or 2 Tums with that, and then in the evening I'll take probably 2 Tums with dinner. Sometimes before bed I'll take 1 Tum. So that was quite a long time to figure out the cough. But cough is from the silent reflux. But then the pulmonologist had also discovered, through all the testing that he had been doing, is I also have cough variant asthma. So a double whammy for the cough. So I now have a couple of inhalers that I use, not every day because they were really wreaking havoc on my vocal cords, which was then preventing me from recording anything. And that's kind of a big deal when everything I do revolves around recording my voice. So I have an emergency albuterol inhaler and then another inhaler that I can just take on occasion when I feel the coughing fits coming on a little bit more than what I typically have throughout the day. Finally, the last issue, which is more of just an annoyance, is postnasal drip on top of all that. So the postnasal drip was most likely exacerbating the cough as well, especially sleeping all night and then waking up in the morning. It tends to be some stuff to cough up. So it's been quite a journey to figure out the cough, and it's led me and my doctors down a couple of different detours, I guess, if you will. But that's the full list of everything that I have that I can think of right now for my health. So I now have a slew of medications. What do I take? I take the Hadlima, the Humira biosimilar for the Crohn's. I take a losartan, which is a blood pressure pill to keep my kidneys healthy. So that's for the IgA nephropathy. And then I have the proton pump inhibitor and some Tums for that silent reflux. And then a couple of inhalers for the cough variant asthma, some Tums. I take a Zyrtec because even though I don't have allergies, that does help with the postnasal drip. And then a couple of vitamins. So I think that's it. So I pretty much went from trying to stay away from all medications to now it is just raining medications is what it feels like sometimes. But I'm happy with it because it's keeping me in good health. I'm in good spirits. I feel good. So everything, I'm happy with it. And I do also want to point out, I think I've shared this before, but in case I haven't, one thing that was really eye-opening to me is that when I got back on the Hadlima, the biosimilar for Humira, I went back through my blog posts on my website and I wanted to add an update on a lot of those posts to now show that I am taking medication again because I just wanted it to be very transparent that, I don't oppose medication. I didn't oppose medication. I just wanted to try and go without medication. But obviously that did not work and my body was busy breaking down anyways, despite all of my best efforts. But in doing so, I realized that so many of my blog posts were me trying to manage minor symptoms. And so I never really was 100% feeling better. It was this years of constantly battling symptoms that would crop up, and then I would try to figure out how to not have those symptoms. So hindsight is 20/20, and my doctors were right, and I did go back on medication, but I am glad that I did, and I am feeling good now. So where does that leave me today? I got my medications, doing good. What else is new? Why is this podcast changing? The big reason this podcast is changing is because me and my husband and I am about to sell our house. It is on the market right now, and we are going to live on a boat. So that's going to be a whole new set of adventures of trying to figure out doctor appointments and medications and we'll be cruising around from as soon as we sell the house until hopefully the end of our lives. So I'm going to start sharing more of my journey and adventures being on the boat and how I navigate chronic illness on a boat, totally different situation. I'll probably do some periodic interviews still with other IBD patients, other health experts. So I'll still throw in some interviews now and again, but I'm going to try to keep it to shorter podcast episodes so that you can listen quickly and share a lot of my experiences of what it's like living on a boat. And hopefully that will be something that you all can glean something from my experiences, whether it's because you're going to be traveling for a year or a short amount of time, but hopefully I will experience a lot of different things that I'll be able to share that will help you guys that are listening. So the last thing I'll say about that is, because I love to create content, obviously, we are going to be sharing our boating adventure on YouTube. So we have already set up a YouTube channel. It's called Offshore Gishing. And so if you want to follow more about just the day-to-day life and what happens on a boat and everywhere we travel, I encourage you to jump onto YouTube and follow us there at Offshore Gishing. But otherwise, please stay tuned to the podcast and there will be more to come. So thank you for sticking with me through the years as this podcast has evolved, is evolving, and being with me on my journey. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to y'all later. Thank you for listening and coming along with me on this journey for better health. Please subscribe to get the latest episodes as they come out, and I hope you'll follow more of my adventures with my husband Jeff on our YouTube channel, Offshore Gishing.